Welcome everyone to this next session. We were just commenting here on the panel, we need to come up with shorter panel title names because this one's Harnessing Advanced Weather Modelling for Climate Resilient Agriculture. We need like an acronym or some things to just make it easier to flow with. But anyway, I think the title gives it away. And I think given we're sort of in the final hours of COP30, we probably don't need to spend a huge amount of time talking about why this topic is really important from an agri-food systems perspective. But before we kick off, I'll just introduce myself and then I'll get each of the panelists to introduce themselves as well and just give a bit of a sense of what their day job is outside of COP30. And then Michael's going to give us a bit of a presentation and talk us through a few slides to help set the scene for this topic. So in that vein, my name is Nick Blong. I'm from Canberra. I work with the Australian Government, lead a sustainability and climate division in the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, encompassing soil health programs and soil data programs, sustainable agriculture grant initiatives to support climate smart farming, as well as adaptation and emissions reduction policies in agriculture as well. So I reckon I've got the best job in the department, but I reckon these guys have got some pretty cool jobs as well. So I'll pass to Maggie to just say a few words around who she is and what your day job outside of this place looks like.
Thanks, Nick. Is this working? You'd think after 2 weeks we would have worked this out. So my name is Maggie Jarrett. I am from Orange, New South Wales, Australia. My day job is in my family's business, Seesaw Wines. We are a organic wine production business. We've got 130 hectares of vineyard. We run Dorper lambs throughout our system, and I manage our export and sustainability on farm. I am also a 2025 Nuffield Scholar, so I'm completing that at the moment, which I'm looking at how do we create more value for primary producers from sustainability and ESG regulation and frameworks. And I'm here with GAF, which is the Global Alliance for Food Leaders.
Morning everyone, Michael Robertson. I'm here with my role in the CSIRO, which is Australia's National Science Agency, supporting the delegation here from the Department of Agriculture. So I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the weather forecasting and climate forecasting tools we've been developing for Australian farmers. Looking forward to it.
And Alan.
Morning everybody, my name's Alan Peterson. I'm a farmer from Tavuni in Fiji. I farm taro and Yangola. We also have a farmer organization in Tavuni called Te Tavuni, which advocates soil health and sustainable farming. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm here as part of the Pacific Farmer Organization. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alan. Michael, I'll go straight to you. You've got a few slides to help set the scene around this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I just want to give you a bit of a sense of some of the tools we've been developing with support from the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund. So I think as a point to make at the very beginning is that the Australian community, including the farming community, is actually quite blessed with very good weather information. Through our National Weather Service, the Bureau of Meteorology, anyone in Australia who has an internet connection can access up-to-date weather information and forecasts going out for a week or more. And also some very good technology around radar, which can forecast where rainfall will be over the next few hours. So that's a highly valued service, but it's only meteorological, so it's only giving people information about wind direction, wind speed, rainfall, temperature, humidity. And what we've been working on under the Future Drought Fund funding is in an initiative called Climate Services for Agriculture. I've got to actually turn my neck around to see what there's actually on the screen. I will stand up. That's a good suggestion. Oh. Thanks, Maggie. I want to talk about two products that we've been producing. One called My Climate View, which is targeting farmers and their advisors getting them to think about what might the climate shifts look like in their region. So it's not a prediction, it's really a projection, and it's really giving people a sense about how a changing climate will affect the commodities that they're producing on their farms. And the second one is targeted at policymakers, and it's called the Australian Agricultural Drought Indicator, and it's around seasonal decision making, particularly around drought support, and also helping regions manage in a preemptive way where they are likely to see severe impacts on farm income. So let's look at the farmer one first, the My Climate View one. And it's fine scale, so it's down to 5 kilometre resolution, and you can select from 22 commodities that actually are relevant to your farming situation. And the example I'm going to give you on this slide is for oranges. So we grow oranges in Australia. Most of it's produced in our Riverina region, but we also grow oranges in a couple of other areas, including my home state of Western Australia. And you can actually look at the prevalence of relevant weather measures at different times of the season for that particular commodity. So for oranges, you might be interested in cool temperatures that stimulate flowering. You might be interested in cool temperatures that stimulate colour development in the fruit. You might be interested in rainfall at certain times of the season as well that are relevant to determining the yield of the crop. And you can pick that a period forward in time, and the climate models will give you a sense of the range of likely outcomes during that in that projection window for those commodities at different sensitivities of the season. Whoop. This isn't working, guys. There we go. I'm just going to move along to the next one and the next one. And then the Australian Drought Indicators one is the one targeting policymakers. And in the past, we've assessed drought in Australia based on comparison of rainfall this season compared to some sort of historical distribution. So it's what was used to be called exceptional circumstances. So exceptional circumstances were when this year's rainfall fell within a certain probability of the historical record. Well, what the Australian Drought Indicators work done has turned climate information into farm income, because that's what matters to farmers. And we've done that by putting the models, putting the climate data for this season up to today, together with a projection for the rest of the season. We've put that through production models that then feed into farm income models. And so we can come up with measures of those three things. And we'll also give the meteorology as well, of course, because people are also interested in that. And we get a probability distribution of where they sit in the historical distribution for that particular part of Australia. So we're having trouble with the slides advancing today. So this is my last slide. So this is basically showing for a particular location, in this case Katanning in Western Australia, where I come from actually, the historical distribution of farm income relative to the historical distribution, and then a range of potential outcomes going forward from today for the rest of the season. So you can see in this case, for the 25-26 season for Katanning in Western Australia, farm income is likely to be about the median for the long-term distribution of income for that part of Australia. But you can see in 23-24, that season was one of the worst on record. And in 21-22, it was one of the best on record. And of course, this is what climate change is doing for farming, right? It's introducing more volatility from year to year that farmers need to think about managing. In this case, though, this is all about policymakers, particularly in government, who are thinking about how might they support communities that are looking at a severe drought. All right, I think I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Michael. As you're taking a seat, I guess the sort of follow-up question to that presentation, before I sort of get some farmer perspectives on these types of tools, is like what sets these particular tools apart from what else is sort of available sort of in the climate sort of weather prediction sort of landscape? Because there's a lot out there. So why does this stand out?
I think three things, Nick. We've done a lot of work actually on what's called user-centered design for these tools, particularly My Climate View, where we've actually there's a real science around how you design an interface for a web-based tool like this so that people actually can intuitively use it easily. And we've done a lot of work on that, making sure it's fit for purpose. That's a general comment. The more specific comments are that my climate view very much takes a commodity specific focus and even looking at the relevant meteorological variables and how they impact that commodity through different times of the year. So oranges being the example I used, that's never been done before. And then finally, the drought indicators work is turning meteorology into farm income, and we've never really assessed drought based on farm income before. We've just based it on on comparing rainfall to the historical thing. So I think it's not, my take-home message here is that the Future Drought Fund funding through Climate Services Australia has produced, I think, tools that are more relevant and hopefully will help decision makers have more confidence about decisions they're making. One's a tactical tool, one's a more strategic planning tool.
Great. So Maggie, you're a decision maker with your family farm. I guess interested in your perspectives on the type of tools you use and also the tools that Michael's showcased this morning. How important are they to running a business like CSL Wines?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo Michael's original comment around we are really lucky in Australia to have the weather data we have access to. Being vineyards, we're a perennial crop, so we really have to think far in the future when we're making any business decisions. We're making very long-term investments, and with the climate right now and the changes that are happening, that means that the decisions we're making today, we have to be thinking around 20 years in advancement. Being a business, we're very much thinking about risk, and when you're thinking about risk, you want data to back up decisions you're making. So for us at a business level, we've used a lot of modelling tools before. Previous to kind of this coming out, the wine industry did a big project and created what was called the Climate Atlas, which I believe was CSIRO's. Yeah, you helped with it. And yeah, and so this basically mapped every region and looked at sort of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years at 1 degree, 1.5, 2, and so on. And so we've really utilised that tool in our business from many points of view. What kind of it showed us is that we, with a warming climate, we will have more growing degree days, which means that our ripening period will be shorter. This means that our harvest will be quicker and more intense. So from a production point of view, when we're looking at how the winery functions, we know that we have gone from an 8-week harvest period to a 6-week, and what's the impact of that on our staff, on how we actually have the ability to harvest in time. A big one for us is that our rainfall is not necessarily decreasing, but we're actually seeing it move from a very winter-dominant rainfall period to more of a spring rainfall period. And what that will do to us means that our disease will increase through the spring period. So a lot of decisions around that have to be made when you're thinking, okay, we're planting a new block of vineyard. What variety are we going to plant? We need to find ones that are more disease tolerant or resistant. So for us, we've just planted, we've gone into Prosecco. Prosecco is a beautiful, big, open bunch of grapes, and it's great. You can get really beautiful airflow through it, and that we're an organic system. We don't have all the tools that you can use for disease, and that's allowed us to have something that we don't need to spray any more chemicals on or anything like that. The other one, when you're looking far into the future, is what kind of other technologies are coming through that we can utilise. So in the wine industry at the moment, there's varieties that have been bred up over the last 40 years called the Peewee varieties, and these are disease tolerant or disease tolerant. And so for us, we're now looking at, after using these sorts of tools, what varieties from that Peewee varieties can we plant to make sure that we can maintain, we don't have to increase our chemical use. We know that we will maintain a crop because these varieties can deal with downy mildew, powdery mildew, and that sort of thing. So we can make a lot of great decisions from it. I do have to emphasise, though, that when you're looking at any of these tools, they are models, and they're almost models of models. And we have to be very careful around the decisions we also make, knowing that it doesn't show the extremes. It doesn't show us, the years that we have a huge rainfall at the wrong time or a last minute frost and that sort of thing. So I think what has to be overlaid with these tools is also that knowledge. And so for us, we're really lucky. Dad's been on the farm for 30 years. He's got fantastic knowledge around what the past has been. I think what's really hard is if you haven't got that long knowledge behind it, making those decisions going forward can also be really tricky. So you actually need to overlay the two together. But yeah, look, there are fantastic tools. They're decision-making tools, and I definitely think for our business, we've utilised them a lot for the benefit of our business.
Great, thanks, Maggie. I might get Alan your perspective on this. What tools and sort of longer-term sort of modelling or forecasts do you have available to you from your farm business perspective?
Well, Nick, in the Pacific, our weather forecasting system is not very good. So, farmers really struggle. We use a lot of knowledge from our forefathers to predict the weather. Because of our isolation, we have different weather conditions, different islands. Even on one island, you might have rain 5 miles away, and somewhere else there's no rain. The weather conditions have really changed. On our island right now, we have heavy rainfall for a couple of weeks, and then we have very hot sunshine for a couple of weeks. So with these tools, it'll really help farmers. The difference with us in Australia is our farmers are very small, but then we work in farming groups and communities. But any tool that'll help us predict or overcome any of our variables will be very helpful for us. So, this tool actually just is something we could really do with in our farming communities. Thank you.
I guess through your broader role on the Pacific Farmers Organisation, do you see any, developments like these types of tools in the pipeline, or is it just not sort of in the pipeline at all? It's not being developed.
Well, right. This is an eye-opener for us. We weren't even aware of these tools, to tell you the truth. So now we're going to work towards working with Australia or any other organization to try and get these tools. It's really an eye-opener. It's something we could really do with. And it being so cross-specific and area-specific, this will really help us. Thank you.
Alan, you may not be aware, but we've trialled an early version of this My Climate View tool in the Pacific just recently. I think we did it in Samoa. I might be wrong there, but there is certainly some efforts to try and build on what we've done here with the Pacific community.
So that's a perfect segue into my next question, which was going to go to the whole panel, really around how we increase accessibility to these types of tools. And I might start with you, Michael, and then come back to Maggie. But Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So I've done a lot of work myself doing this sort of stuff, engaging with farmers during my career as a farming systems scientist. And a lot of it's around the conversation you have around the data that's the really important part. Simply providing the tool and then walking away and expecting farmers to have rich discussions about it without the benefit of someone sort of guiding that discussion, I think is a bit naive. So, and a lot of it, I'm interested to hear Maggie's perception on this, but I think farmers in Australia have gone a long way in the last, say, 20 years appreciating the idea of probabilities when presenting weather information to them. And I think that's been in part because I think the agricultural research sector has put a lot of effort into doing that, explaining the concepts of that. I think we've got some more work to do about how we talk about projections, so climate change projections. And there's been some negative media in the press lately in Australia about the usefulness of My Climate View in terms of predicting the weather when, we can't even get the short-term weather forecast right. Well, that's the wrong way to think about it, because these climate projections are just that. They're projections, they're scenarios, they're pointing to a general trend that's there. And they help long-term planning, like with Maggie, about deciding what vine she's going to plant and other sorts of decisions. They're not designed to tell you that on the 10th of January 2032, it's going to rain a lot. They're going to give you a sense about whether the climate's drying, whether you're going to have more heat waves, whether you're going to have particular seasons of the year that are going to be drier or wetter than what they have been.
Thanks, Michael. So I guess, like, Maggie, from your perspective, is there, I mean, you've clearly outlined sort of how important these types of tools are to decision making in your farm business, but also acknowledge the limitations of them. Is that something that is mirrored amongst your peers? Is there trust in these types of tools? There is a bit of an Australian pastime in throwing rotten tomatoes at our weather bureau, for example. Is there sort of enough confidence, I guess, that these tools are available, and also how to use them and embed them in farm businesses?
Yeah. So I'll probably look at a broader Australian context for a second. When you look at agriculture in Australia, you have a group of people who, I mean, our average age of a farmer is 57. So the first issue is people who are digitally literate to be able to actually use a tool like that. You then have a percentage of farmers in Australia who are climate deniers. And then you have a percentage who are using it, the tools, and understand them. And so the group that use it and understand it, I think they do trust it and they understand the benefit of it. But I wouldn't say that's majority of farmers in Australia. And so I think when we talk about accessibility, the issue is not with the group, the 20% that understand it and use it. What we need to be looking at is the 80% that don't. Now, there's obviously the older group who, look, in 10 years' time, profitability in agriculture in Australia isn't fantastic at the moment, and a lot of kids or young people are not coming into the industry. So there's a lot of older people who are going, in 10 years' time, I'm selling the farm, I'm not in agriculture, I actually don't even care about forecasting what's going to happen. So I think that obviously has a whole lot of issues within itself around, you know, getting young people into agriculture and the future of agriculture in Australia. The other thing is, I was in Canberra at the beginning of this year for Nuffield, and we were showing this tool there. Now, most people who do a Nuffield scholarship tend to be more of that 20% farmer group, and I would say 80% of us in the room had never seen the tool. So I would argue that we're not actually even aware it exists. My biggest thing with any of these projects, and it's kind of what Michael was saying before, is we actually have to meet the farmers where they are. And so if we're going to invest in massive tools like this, we need to make sure that we're actually getting out onto the ground, training people and bringing it to them to, you know, do a webinar or do a workshop or something doesn't work anymore. Farmers don't come, they're busy, they don't see the value. And so you really actually have to go to them and literally force it onto them. You need to find those champions in the region that use it, who can help kind of explain why we should be there. But yeah, I think the opportunity, if we're going to spend a lot of money on tools like this, is that adoption piece is included in it. So often, and it's definitely not researchers' fault, it's how our funding system works, but adoption isn't included in a research program. And so without that, you're not actually looking at, okay, when you do a project like this, how are we making sure that the value is created for the farmer at the end?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think there's a role there for things like the drought hubs. Maggie, I don't know if you're involved in your drought hub in your part of Australia, but and natural resource management groups, farmer groups to be involved in this. I mean, my climate view is really only a year old, so it is early days. But I totally agree with you. There's more work to be done in terms of how we bring that into conversations with farmers and raise the awareness level that it's actually out there.
Thanks. Alan, you mentioned earlier the sheer scale of some of the challenges in terms of remoteness and distance in Pacific Islands and farming in the Pacific Islands. Your eyes lit up when you saw this tool, and probably thought about all the possibilities you could use this type of information in your farm business. But I guess going to Maggie's point around actually encouraging awareness and adoption and use, and the fact that often this relies on a lot of intensive work around extension and outreach and face-to-face time with with farmers, and I guess probably in the Pacific, without making too many assumptions, the challenge around sort of digital accessibility as well, because a lot of this information is digital based. So I guess coming back to your earlier reflections about this tool, but also the challenges, even in an Australian context where we have relatively low awareness and use, how does that play out in the Pacific? And I guess where are the shortcuts? So you sort of don't go on this journey, spend a lot of money on fancy tools, but can't actually be used in a farm business such as yours.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, in the Pacific, because of all isolations of all the different islands, this is the beauty of our farmer network. We have the Pacific Farmer Network, and then we have farming groups in all the different islands. So I think the way to introduce these tools is to introduce it to the farming organizations, because we have our champion farmers. The context will be a bit different in the Pacific. The researchers will talk to our farmers. And as Maggie said, having workshops is not the way to go. Although we're small, we're busy too. But if you have your champions, and then they can speak the language to the other farmers. And because we live in communities, if this sort of tool is available to someone in the community, he'll share that information with everybody else. So I think that's the way we'll have to go in the Pacific context. But it's brilliant if we could have tools like this in the Pacific. Thank you.
So I guess picking up one of the themes there, Alan, around sort of partnerships and community, and I guess more broader than sort of just climate tools, but this ultimately sort of goes to the challenge farmers have to confront around sort of business resilience to climate change. Are there sort of other examples beyond sort of climate tools where these types of local community farmer-led groups have worked well in the Pacific? I'd be interested to kind of hear success stories and case studies, if you don't mind.
Yeah, any new or even old ideas with farmer groups, it's easier to get the message out to everybody. Farmers generally keep secrets. They don't like to tell their special secrets. But what we're encouraging farmers is to share. If you're going to keep your knowledge to yourself, as Maggie said, the farming community in Fiji too, in the whole Pacific is getting older. And we've got to do things to make it more exciting and make it more profitable. So the difference with us in the Pacific is we live, our farms are small, and it's part of our identity. So, somebody's going to be there. But, we've got to make it better for them in the future. So any tool or anything that can help our future generation will be really good for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I guess, Michael, I feel like you sort of got something on the tip of your tongue. You sort of want to... Oh, the floor's yours, Michael.
Well, I was just going to reflect a little bit on work we've done. No, stop laughing, Christina. On work we've done in India with smallholder farmers there, Ellen, where we haven't had digital tools like this. And we've done some really simple things there, like giving out rain gauges to farmers and getting them to record their rainfall every day and writing it down in a table or on the calendar. It might be stuck on the front of the refrigerator or something like that. And having some printouts of what rainfall happened in past years. And you can start having conversations like, ooh, this year's looking like 1984. The old farmers said, oh yeah, this reminds me of 1984. And remember that year we had a good harvest, or we had a bad harvest, or we didn't know what harvest we were going to get until the rain came later. And you can have some quite rich discussions about that using this analog years concept, we call it. And a lot of it's driven by farmers being willing to at least start collecting their own data and keeping a record of it. So I'd be interested to hear what others think about that. Maggie, do you have a rain gauge on your place, for example? Sorry, Nick, I'm taking over the moderation here.
Let's go for it. Yeah. Happy to be made redundant. Let's go for it.
Yeah, we don't have a rain gauge. We have weather stations, soil probes. We have an entire mapping system where we can go on, we can see where our level of disease pressure is, we can see our soil water profile down to about a metre. So those sorts of tools are so integral to our decision making in our business, especially if we're looking at, when you look at sort of climate change and sustainability, but also profitability and trying to decrease inputs. We use these to minimise our chemical use, minimise our overall water use. And so I think, you know, I don't understand how those models have all been put together, but the people who have done it behind the scenes are using, you know, public data and all of that sort of stuff. So yes, we do, but I've got to again, like, that costs money. And in the Australian context, we have larger scale farms and we can do that. That's not necessarily a solution unless there's sort of a partnership for places like you in Fiji.
So Alan, yes, I feel like I feel like I'm increasingly surplus to requirements in this discussion. But Alan, what sort of data are you collecting on your farm business, and how is it recorded and sort of capturing sort of that hard data?
Yeah, personally, in our farmers organization, we've introduced rain gauges to our farmers group, so farmers are starting to collect data. You know, data collection is very foreign to us, so it's, you know, we have to make an effort. But what we're doing is, what we found very successful in the Pacific or in Fiji is this farmer-to-farmer exchanges. So when farmers get together and they talk about what they're doing, you know, but you know, it comes to the bottom line is farmers won't go out and buy a rain gauge in the Pacific. Yeah, you have to give them one, and they'll collect the data, and then they'll find, or we found, how important it is to have that data. But to take the first step, somebody's got to provide the rain gauge.
In some cases, what we've done is we've got the school children to do it, because they like doing that kind of stuff, right? Well, it's a family thing.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. No, it's kind of cool, because if the kids are doing it, they're going to do it when they go back home and encourage their parents to do it. It becomes a daily thing they do in the classroom. Oh, how much rain did we get over the last day? It becomes quite a community-based thing, like you say, yeah.
I'll just add to that. I think what's interesting is that I think with all the data we have started collecting in Australia, we've actually lost a little bit of that community space. So I think there is a too far the other way. I used to work for the Department of Primary Industries, and yes, we'd run workshops because that's the KPI of a project. And I think you just start seeing less and less people coming, and what is so important right now is that intergenerational transfer of knowledge, because farmers are older and there's not as many young people coming in, and if we don't get that knowledge passed on now, we'll lose it. And so what I would say, what we can learn from you, Alan, and your communities is bringing that community space back in, and how do we do that in a way that we're not just kind of robots on farms and looking at numbers on data sheets. It's, you know, I've followed, you know, I've come back from overseas and I've just spent, 3 weeks kind of following data around the farm, and I've probably learnt more in that 3 weeks than I could ever from reading a book or anything like that. So yeah, it kind of goes two ways.
Michael, just making sure you're...
Well, sorry, Nick. I'm just giving him a break, okay? The poor guys are weary. Some of the cooler things happening at the moment with farm management software, like the AgWorld software now allows farmers to seek permission to share their data with neighbouring farmers who are also using the software. Because you know how you always have this conversation with farmers, like it's always never rains on my place, but it always rains on the neighbour's place. You know those conversations you have with farmers. And being able to share data like that digitally is actually quite a powerful thing too around, like you say, trying to bring the community in more in the conversation.
I was just going to come back to the partnerships piece. That's okay. I think...
Thanks Maggie.
In Australia, scientific research partnerships is so important, and we've got some of probably the best minds in the world, I find, in agricultural research in Australia. But I think that value piece has been lost a little bit. I mean, you can probably speak to this a little bit more, but I think we're getting the lowest amount of funding for research, especially in agriculture, than we ever had, like since the 1960s or something. But I think where we can bring that value back is trying to understand, why are farmers not kind of pushing back and supporting research more at the moment? And we have kind of a very traditional research model in Australia, and although there might be people who try and change it within, we're kind of stuck within a system. And so what I would say is, like, the biggest piece, and we've heard it again and again at this conference, is that you have to bring farmers in at the beginning of a project. They have to be true partners. They can't just be kind of bought in at the end. So when I think of doing my work at Department of Primary Industries, we'd all of a sudden have research. I was at Extension, and I'd have research come across my desk, and they'd be like, oh, can you kind of get that out to the growers? And I would be like, one, no one wants this. How much did you spend on this? Because you clearly didn't ask anyone if they need it. And three, I can't extend this because I don't understand, what the need of it was and what the value is. And so I think it's kind of reimagining our research landscape. We've got the amazing researchers and the knowledge, but how do we bring in all these other partners to make sure that when we're doing these projects, real value is created, and through that, hopefully we can get more research funding as well.
Maggie, if I can, build on that a little bit in terms of linking sort of that research extension piece to sort of the partnerships and community sort of perspective, because I can get your perspective and Alan's as well around kind of what makes that sort of relationship work, because farmers are time poor, they're engaging with risk every day, lots of decisions to make, and I'm sure they're invited to lots of things to sort of contribute ideas and priorities and things like that, but they can't do it all.
Yeah.
And just because a researcher or a government agency has asked someone to come to something doesn't mean that you've actually got their input or got sort of a fair sort of comprehensive assessment of kind of shared priorities across different regions and commodities, etc. So I think the question is, like, how do you sort of bridge that gap and make it easier for farm businesses to sort of have input? Is it down to sometimes it might be, and I guess Alan, keen for your input on this too, but does it come down to sort of one champion in one particular region who's got the time and is passionate about a particular topic and sort of takes on that role? But not every region necessarily will have that champions. But what's worked from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can't say it's necessarily worked, it's more what I think will work. Farmers have to be part of the investment when we look at these projects. So, for example, I mean, I've visited a lot of farms this year, and similarly on our farm since I've been back the last few weeks, we're in a lot of research partnerships, and we don't get paid for our time, we don't get paid for our knowledge. We are just kind of we need just skill set and knowledge so we can make this project work. And so for me, it's really bringing us into the investment and actually, appreciating what we're giving and paying for that, basically. We're doing a drought project at the moment with the drought fund. It's only just about to start. And the group who's doing it came out and visited us, and we sat around the table for 2 hours talking about what the project should look like, because even though they'd gotten the funding, they hadn't actually worked out what it looked like, and it was on us to actually say, well, this is what we want to do. We then went out to the vineyard and had a look at the vineyard, and also spent another 2 hours talking, because researchers like to, get on and talk while we have a million things to do. And then after that, they said, okay, because we were planting a new vineyard block, and the research is around plant growth in the vineyard at planting. So we're doing a whole lot of trials around, putting compost out, underground irrigation, and doing all these many trials to understand what affects root growth in new plantings. They said, well, okay, we haven't actually signed off on the funding yet. It's still going through the government. And we said, well, we're planting next week and we don't have an option. This is $30,000 a plant, so we have to get into the ground. We can't wait. And so a lot of these fundings and projects are created, but then it's got to go through the, red tape system. It's got to get signed off and all of these sorts of things. And meanwhile, we're waking up every day and we have a business to run and we have things to do. So I think it's going... we have to start thinking much more forward. We can't be going, okay, we've got this money to do grants, and this is to do with our political cycle being every 3 years, and there's a whole lot of things, but I really think we need to start really forward-looking. What is it that we're trying to understand and know, and then who do we need to engage on the ground at the beginning? That isn't going to be every farmer. That is going to be the champions, the ones who are more progressive, because they will have probably the farm set up that you can really trial these things. They also are probably the people who go out and talk to a lot of people about it. And then paying us for our time as you do the researcher, the person who's taking the samples, all of that sort of stuff, because our knowledge and time is just as valuable as everyone else's.
Yep. Alan, does that resonate with you in terms of like how you get that farmer-led sort of participation? Your community groups are so important to sort of how your farming systems work.
Yeah, Nick, it resonates really well with us. And I think once the researchers sort of get into the have to talk with the farmers right from the beginning, right at the beginning. So, once you get the respect, because sometimes the farmers don't really understand what the researchers are trying to do. So I think if they sit down at the table right at the beginning and the farmers are involved in the planning, not only of the project, but also the finances, like what Maggie's saying. A lot of time farmers are given things to do, and researchers don't realize that, farmers' time is money. And if we can get over that hurdle, I think, the research is valuable to the farmers, and the farmers will be more willing to take part in any of the trials or whatever a researcher has. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to avoid eye contact with Michael for a moment and just see if there's any questions from the audience. Otherwise, Michael's got the floor. Michael.
Oh, no, we've got a question.
Sorry, there's a question at the back.
Yep.
I'll come down.
I'm guessing he's from the Pacific.
Thank you very much. I'm Malaki here from Samoa. I agree with everything that the panelists have shared today, but I just wanted to weigh in a point in regards to that last question in what can we do to sort of further provide farmers with that assurance or trust in these types of tools. I think we're beginning to look into cost-benefit analysis of these soft solutions are very important, not just to show farmers, but also to prove to the governments that these tools are actually more cost beneficially wise to support adaptation at the grassroots levels, and so that governments can invest more into buying the equipment and the tools that's required to expand these sort of monitoring networks. Because most times in the Pacific, they prioritize other sectors and hardly the hydrological and meteorological side of things, which is very helpful data. So we try and we're asking our partners to help us do those cost-benefit analysis of these early warning systems and also these tools, so that our governments can see the importance of them and put more investments into these important research and also data early warning systems that's been provided by CSIR. Thank you.
Thanks.
Maggie wants to make a comment, I think,
Perfect.
and I'll go after her.
Noted.
I just want to echo that some of the most successful research projects I've seen aren't just, like a plant pathologist or that very focused. The projects will have an economist in it, a sociologist in it. They will have the specific person for that research tool, like a plant pathologist. So you need to, I 100% agree with that cost-benefit analysis. We actually have to have much more multifaceted groups in our research now, because a lot of our challenges don't tend to just be very focused on those small things. Now, against that argument is also the fact that there is some things that none of us even know we need to know, and there is some very specific people who have to do that research, and that kind of falls in a different category.
Traditional cost-benefit analysis around this sort of proving the value of better weather information can be quite difficult at times, because if you're comparing someone making a decision with the benefit of the tool, comparing them with a situation where they haven't used the tool, but they're basing it on their gut instinct, sometimes the decision's not any different. But what it does is, using the tool is, and I've been interested to get Maggie and Alan's view on this, is it gives a little bit more confidence about that educated guess. Like, I've got a little bit more of a hunch that this is probably a good decision I'm going to make here, rather than just being based on my intuition or my historical experience. And that's very hard to put a dollar figure on, because it's all about confidence and feeling like you're managing risk maybe better, so maybe you're sleeping better at night. Maybe that's the cost-benefit analysis, right? But you guys got a thought on that about risk?
Final words from Maggie and Alan.
Yeah, I agree. It's a decision support tool. It's not. It's just kind of backing up what we would want to do and giving us a bit more confidence. And the risk, I guess, with any weather modelling is that they're not a crystal ball. They're just a decision helping tool. So we have to be very careful that when kind of rolling this out and extending this sort of information, that people don't use it to make decisions around adaptation, because it can lead to maladaptation, which is as big of an issue as adapting.
Alan?
Yeah, I agree with what Maggie just said. Yeah, you know, having a tool like this helps you make the right decision. It's not 100%, but at least it's better than just guessing or using your gut instinct. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll have to wrap this panel up. Thanks to the audience for coming along. I think also thanks to our moderator, Michael, for his time this morning. But in particular, I want to also acknowledge, we've done a lot of panels, of course, over the last couple of weeks here in Baleem. But I am slightly biased, but I always find the panels that have sort of the farmer perspectives on the panel and that rich discussion and sort of real world sort of perspectives around sort of how we sort of produce nutritious sort of low emissions food and fibre in a changing climate. Getting those farmer perspectives is always what I could spend all day talking about. So I really appreciate Alan and Maggie's time and perspective as well. Thank you.